Hi.
Hiya, we're back.
So, was it scary being a girl going into STEM?
Yeah, I mean, even from being in school, I was the only girl in my maths class, and I think there was maybe 2 of us in our physics.
Wow.
But to be honest, it was fine. I think it was only kind of maybe the first time when I chose it and I went to the class, I was like, oh, I'm the only girl in here. But then after 2 minutes, you're like, oh, it's fine. I'm the same as everyone else. I'm going to get treated the same. I think probably it was maybe more the people around me maybe made me worry slightly. And I was like, oh, am I doing something which not a lot of other girls are doing? I really didn't realize. But then there's something really nice about when you get to university. I actually met a lot of other girls who were very similar to me, and they were in the same position. They were also the only girl in their maths class at school. So it was kind of this nice, almost bringing together. And you suddenly find a group of people who are very like you and have similar interests at university. So put yourself out your comfort zone at the start, and you'll pay back when you've got an assignment which you're stuck on. You can ask your friend, have you finished it? Please send me, please help me. So yeah, I think it was daunting at first, but once I was there, once I was doing my lectures, I made friends. It was totally fine, really. And now there's so much more girls doing engineering, and the numbers are increased slowly, but they are increasing. So it's good.
So what did you learn from being an engineer in a male-dominated workshop?
To be honest, I learned that everyone is so willing to help and teach you. But I think this is kind of one of the experience that I've just had as a personal experience for me, is that I think sometimes when people want to help you all the time, it can kind of hinder you. So for example, if I'm maybe away to drill a hole or do something, they're like, oh, I can do it for you. And they're genuinely just trying to help and be nice. But then I'm kind of well, no, I want to do this myself. Because if I don't do this myself now, then I'm never going to do it in the future. And it's kind of this initial barrier of, you'll find a lot of females will be kind of more intimidated, or they'll just be less likely to jump in, and they're a lot more scared to fail, and they want to be perfect. Not for everyone, but you'll find a majority. And so I think what I really learned in that situation was, just say yes. Just be like, no, I'll do it. I'm fine. And not being rude at all. And obviously, I want to be able to learn from each other, but I think it's one of those things. It's confidence, and you do sometimes just need to say yes now and solve the problem later on, and just have confidence in yourself that you can do it, and you are just as good as everyone around you, even if you are a minority in that situation.
So I think it's just that initial fear, what if I do something wrong? What if I try it but I mess it up? But I think like you said, just go for it. Worst case, you mess it up, you'll know how to do it right the second.
Yeah, my boss always says that. We'll be like, well, what if I cut the hole wrong? And he's like, well, you're going to need to do something wrong so you can learn from it. So yeah, I think my boss is a lot more wants me to make mistakes. I'm like, no, if I think about this maybe for a little bit longer, I hopefully won't make that mistake. So yeah, I think, but yeah, when especially you're building, making, no matter what you're doing, you need to make a mistake, and you've got to understand that the people above you, your bosses, they've all made the same mistakes as well, and it's the only way that you're going to stand on your own 2 feet. Because it's only if you keep asking questions all the time and wanting stuff to get passed, there comes a kind of point that you need to be like, do you know what, I can do this. I don't need to ask for help here.
So, in your opinion, how can men be better allies for women in STEM?
Oh, this is a very good question. So I think if, actually happened to me already not that long ago. I think if you're a male and you see kind of an awkward situation happen, or something which you feel is not right, so if something's made, maybe a comment that's a bit derogatory or something, then I think speak up and say something. And because I've been in a situation where it's happened to me before, And honestly, it like kind of went over my head, to be honest. I was like, oh, whatever, like I move on from it. I feel like it happens, not all the time, but genuinely, it didn't really bother me that much. And then actually, someone else in the call called me after and said, Penny, like, were you comfortable with that comment? Like, I mean, it didn't make me feel good, so how did it make? And I said, I mean, yeah, it wasn't great, but like, moving on, do you know what I mean? I didn't want to make a fuss, like, but he was like, well, no, I'll say something. I'll not say that you said, but I'll say something. So he actually sat down and brought it up with the other person on the call. And since then, I've kind of never experienced that again from that person. So again, it's a lot of it is it's awareness, but it's also holding someone accountable when something kind of goes wrong. Because in that situation, like, you're never really going to change the pure extremes of people who think, you know, when they're on kind of this end of the spectrum in terms of maybe their views on stuff. But the people you are going to change are the people in the middle who have maybe said something that's slightly out of line, which they genuinely just didn't really realize they said, or they didn't know. But if you actually sit them down and talk to them, they've made a change, and they're now, because that other person brought it up, he's going to be in a meeting with other women and he's never going to say something like that again. So it's only from speaking up and kind of saying that and holding someone accountable that change is ever going to happen. So yeah, I think that from personal experience, that has actually been the biggest kind of male ally that I've really experienced, like, firsthand. So, and I think that can have a huge impact, because that's a situation where I would never feel comfortable really bringing it up, even though I should. And hands down, if you have the guts to do that, then go for it. I admire you, but I'm being honest with myself, and I would have just left the situation and ignored it. So yeah, being able to speak up is a huge one, I would say, and I'm extremely thankful for that person who did that for me.
Yeah, that was really sweet of them. And I think also another thing is, I've noticed that I have an older brother, and a lot of my interest in science is because of him, because he would sit and, like, you know, even if he was making cars with paper and like straws, he'd always like somehow make me help him. So that's one thing that definitely got me really, really interested in science. So I think that's also one thing that, in my opinion, especially like boys and younger kids can do if they have siblings. And
yeah, for sure. It's like making sure that everyone participates. Like if you go outside and play football, it's like, who wants to play football? Like I was always like one of the only girls who'd get up at lunchtime and play with all the boys. So yeah, I think making sure that you're not excluding anyone from potentially liking something. And that's where like children toys have such a huge influence on kids, and making sure that if you're a father or a brother or whoever, like you make sure that you share your toys, like, and you don't just assume that someone doesn't want to play with them because they're of the opposite sex, for example.
Yeah, no, definitely. So being a mentor for, like, as part of the New York Academy of Sciences, you've had the chance to mentor many, many young aspiring girls. So what is some of your favorite advice that you have for them?
Definitely doing the extra co-curricular things like the New York program or anything else that you can kind of get your hands stuck into is going to stand you in a really good position, not only just to get a job, but for yourself. Like you're going to learn a lot about yourself through those experiences. So even if you, for example, you joined a coding club, for example, and then you got really, even if you didn't really like the coding aspect of it, but then you started to really enjoy, like, say, working with other people or organizing the coding events, or you're going to learn through those things like, oh, but I maybe didn't like this, but I actually really enjoyed this instead. And I think it's through all those different experiences you can kind of start to like guide your way to maybe where your next step is, and where you can maybe see yourself in like 10 years time or 15 years time, which is a question that people ask me, and I'm like, I don't know. So that's scary. But yeah, I would say stay curious and really try to find a mentor, whether that's through a program or ask someone on LinkedIn or message them. Like you'll be surprised at how willing people are to sit down and have a chat with you.
Yes, I think like you were talking about how when you went to university, you met so many different girls who, even like for them, they were the only girl in that math or science class. So I think same way for me through these programs, like I've met so many girls from all parts of the world, and I've gotten the chance to talk to so many mentors like you. So it's really great. Like, I think just trying to build that community and reaching out, like, don't be afraid to just reach out, because like you said, you never know how willing people are to help.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I found this question really interesting. So you were telling me what advice you'd give to other girls, but what advice would you give if you could go back and give your younger self any advice? What advice would you give her?
I would say don't be so indecisive. Like, I think, to be fair, is maybe being like, when I think about doing something or I decide, I'm a bit like you, I want to do a bit of everything. So like when I did sports, for example, I would always do like all the different types of sports, because I was like, I love them all, they're all so good. Whereas maybe if I just picked like one sport and really focused on it, then I could have got like a lot further with that sport than spreading myself too thin. So yeah, I think that's one really kind of, it's probably a negative aspect of how I do things. I spread myself way too thin. Like, I always do way too many different things. But then I think it's from me doing all those different things that so many different opportunities have arisen, and I've learned so much from doing that. You just kind of find that there'll be points during the year when you're like, I have so much on right now. I don't know what I'm going to do. But then I always seem to manage to get over it, and that's where the support of your family and friends around you is so important, because sometimes I just need to talk to someone and say, okay, right, I have all of this on. What is the most important thing I need to do today and now? Like, let's do that first, because it's sometimes a bit overwhelming when you've got all of these things on.
And if there's any achievement or anything you've accomplished that you'd like to go back, or you think that, you know, you'd love to go back and tell yourself that this was possible, I worked towards it, and I did it. Is there anything in particular?
So in my final year, I was actually awarded this. I was actually awarded the engineering medal. So it's like the person to show most promise to do good with engineering in the world, or something like that. But there's only one that's awarded for the whole of the university. So I mean, I was so shocked when I got it. I was like, wait, what? Like, me? Because I felt like, well, there's other people who are smarter than me and better at this, but it's not about that. It's the fact that I was able to do really well in all my subjects. I was able to get a first degree, but at the same time, I was president of FemEng, and I was building prosthetic hands for kids, and I was doing all of these extra things to really use engineering for other people outside of university, rather than just focusing on my exams to get an A. Like, it's about how you manage all of those different things, and so I think that's why I was recognised, and that's why I was awarded it. But if you told me when I was sitting at school that I would have got that award, I would have said, you're crazy. Like, no way I would get that. So yeah, it's weird how I think I got told a piece of advice on, like, say as you get older in your career, you're always looking forward, and you're always like, what should I do next? How can I be better? What can I do to improve? And I got told you should always look back and see yourself 5 years ago when you're a younger girl, or if you're in school, or even just when you started your career and your job, and you should say, like, look back and see yourself and think, what would you have seen if you saw yourself walk into the classroom now? Or what would you say? And yeah, I would say, well done. I'm impressed. Yeah, definitely. You should not always look forward, and take a second to look back for a while.
That's so cool.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.